Hi, I'm Emily. My parents supported my sister as she stole my job, then called it growth. They said I was overreacting, until I gave them 12 hours to vacate the building they didn't know I owned. But that wasn't the worst part. The betrayal didn't start in the boardroom. It started years ago, when my silence became their strategy. Ever felt like your own family was just waiting to erase you? I arrived 15 minutes earlier than usual, like always. Maxwell Financial's marble lobby reflected everything I had worked for. Clean lines, soft lighting, the faint scent of eucalyptus from the diffuser they'd installed last quarter. I adjusted my blazer, not out of nervousness, just habit. But something felt off. The receptionist, who usually greeted me with a, "Hey boss lady," avoided eye contact. The elevator ride up to the 22nd floor was unusually quiet. Too quiet. When I stepped out, the lights in the executive wing were already on, which was odd. I usually turn them on myself. As I walked toward my office, I passed by the boardroom and noticed the glass doors were frosted. On a Thursday. Frosted meant private meeting. I slowed my pace. The door opened before I reached my office. Gavin Crane, our CEO, stepped out and smiled a smile so perfectly rehearsed it made my stomach clench. "Emily," he said smoothly, "could we have a word?" His voice was polite, the kind of polite you use right before slitting someone's throat in the corporate world. Inside the boardroom, Nadine was already seated at the head of the table. My little sister. She didn't meet my eyes, just looked down at the notepad in front of her like she was embarrassed, or pretending to be. The other board members nodded at me with awkward expressions. "We've decided," Gavin began, "that the company needs to evolve in a direction that aligns with future leadership goals." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "Nadine has been preparing for this. Her MBA focus on digital transition aligns better with our next 5-year growth plan," he continued, like this had been a long-planned, thoughtful strategy and not the ambush it clearly was. I looked at Nadine, waiting for her to speak. She didn't. She just gave a half smile, shrugged like, "What can I do?" "You're firing me?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "After 15 years?" "Not firing. Restructuring," Gavin corrected, as if I couldn't hear the difference. "Of course, you'll receive a severance package. HR will walk you through the transition." I stared at my sister. "Is this what family looks like to you?" She finally looked at me then and said the words I'll never forget. "You've had your time, Em. Let someone else shine for once." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I stood, nodded, and walked out. Packing up was quiet. My team didn't come by. No one did. My nameplate was already gone, just a smudge on the door where it had been. I boxed up my personal files and a framed photo of Dad and me from my first promotion. My hand paused on it. That version of us was long gone. Back home that evening, I opened my laptop out of habit. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe clarity, maybe distraction. Instead, I found something else. I ran a background sweep on my internal network activity, something I used to do weekly. There it was. An access log from Nadine's IP, dated 3 months ago. An alert linked to unauthorized surveillance. My heart went cold. I checked the timestamp. It aligned with the morning I'd left early for a meeting. She had accessed the internal camera system. I traced the IP back again. The hidden stream had been routed to a private server, hers. Nadine had been watching me, recording me, prepping a file, no doubt, of reasons to justify removing me. I stared at the screen for a long time, pulse steady, mind sprinting. This wasn't just betrayal, it was surgical. I opened the folder I hadn't touched since I started Phoenix Holdings, a shell corporation no one in the company knew I owned. Inside, documentation, lease clauses, scanned contracts. I highlighted one section. Clause 17.3. In the event of unethical corporate governance or manipulation of executive staff, the lessor reserves the right to terminate the tenancy agreement with 12 hours notice. Maxwell's headquarters. My building. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Nadine. "No hard feelings, right? Family first?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened my drawer, pulled out the original lease agreement, and set it on the table like a loaded weapon. "Family first?" I whispered. Let's see how they handle eviction. The call came just before 8 p.m. I was still in the same clothes from that morning, curled on my couch with the TV playing some rerun I wasn't watching. Loretta's name lit up the screen like it always did, with a weight I could never explain. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Emily, honey," she began, voice soft like she was laying down a blanket over broken glass. "I heard what happened." I didn't speak. I wanted to hear how she'd spin it. She sighed like I'd already disappointed her. This wasn't easy for Nadine either. You know she's not as resilient as you. There it was, the angle. "She didn't take anything from me, Mom," I said quietly. "She was handed it." Loretta clicked her tongue. "She needs this win, Emily. She's been through so much. Rehab, the breakup, all the pressure. This could turn her life around. And I should what? Applaud her as she turns mine inside out? That's not fair," she said, her voice sharpening. "You've always been the strong one. She's the fragile one. You stepping aside gracefully shows maturity, class." I felt the wine glass in my hand tremble. I gripped it tighter. "So you knew," I said, "before it happened." Loretta didn't answer. She didn't have to. 16 years ago. I was 25, halfway through my MBA program in Chicago. I had just aced my midterms when Loretta flew in for what she called an urgent family dinner. We sat across from each other in a cheap Italian restaurant off campus. She didn't order anything. "Nadine's using again," she said, like announcing a rainstorm. "We're out of options. We need you home." I blinked. "I'm in the middle of finals." "It's just a break," she promised. "Come home, help us, then you can come right back." I never came back. I took a leave of absence, which quietly became a withdrawal. The tuition refund went toward Nadine's second stint in rehab. Loretta called it the right thing for the family. I called it a pause. But that pause stretched into a void that became permanent. Back in my living room, I stared at the ceiling while Loretta waited on the line. All I could think was, this isn't a new wound. It's the reopening of an old one they never let heal. "I'm not stepping aside, Mom," I finally said. "I was pushed, and you were part of it." There was silence. Then she said, "I didn't raise you to be bitter." I hung up. The room was too still after that, like something in me had gone hollow. Not from shock, but from confirmation. This wasn't a mistake. This was a pattern. Every time Nadine slipped, I was the cushion. Every time she wanted to climb, I was the step stool. I walked to the bookshelf, pulled out the safe key, and opened the small black box I hadn't touched in years. Inside, beneath a stack of old tax returns and investment ledgers, was a folder labeled Phoenix Holdings. I flipped it open. Lease Clause 17.3 stared back at me like a dare. They think this is over. It's barely begun. The Monday morning after the call from my mother, I returned to the office, not as a CFO, not as a respected leader, but as a ghost no one had invited back. I told myself it was just to collect my things. Just a box, maybe two. The security guard at the entrance hesitated before waving me through, like he wasn't sure if I still existed in the system. When the elevator opened on the 22nd floor, I was met with silence, the kind that stretches too long and dares you to interrupt it. The first thing I noticed was the wall, the Legacy Leaders plaque. My name was gone, just a faint outline where the lettering used to be, like they had peeled it off in the middle of the night. There was a new name there, hers. I stood in front of it for too long. A young assistant I didn't recognize brushed past me and muttered, "Excuse me, ma'am," like I was someone's aunt who had gotten lost. My office door was closed. I knocked once out of some warped instinct. When it opened, Nadine wasn't inside, but everything else was new. New desk, new art, even the color on the walls was different. I saw a coffee mug on the corner. It said, "She believed she could, so she did." My throat tightened. A man from HR was waiting in the corner with a tablet. "We've prepared your belongings," he said, pointing toward two bland boxes near the elevator. "Also, just so you know, we've rebranded the internal network. Your past campaign folders have been migrated." "Migrated where?" I asked. He gave a bland smile. "Under our new leadership." My achievements weren't archived. They were reassigned. My name didn't appear on the Q4 decks, the merger reports, or the award presentations. It was as if I had never existed. Walking back to the elevator, I passed my old assistant. She pretended not to see me. I couldn't blame her. No one wants to catch the eye of someone who's already been erased. The elevator doors closed behind me, and I pressed the button for the lobby. As the floor numbers ticked down, 2 interns got on. They looked young. One whispered to the other, not knowing I could hear. "She had a breakdown or something, right? Like full meltdown?" The other nodded. "That's what Morgan said. Total burnout. Couldn't handle the pressure." Morgan, my former closest ally, my confidant. The same woman I stayed late for, covered for, mentored. The one I helped survive a PR crisis no one else would touch. By the time I stepped outside, the sky had turned a hard gray. I walked for blocks, past a bakery I used to love, past the bar Nadine got banned from during her first rehab relapse. Everything was familiar and distant, like walking through a dream you'd had too many times. I stopped at a coffee shop, ordered something I didn't want, sat down, didn't touch it. They weren't just removing me from the building. They were rewriting the entire narrative, replacing me with a newer, shinier version who drank green juice and wore inspirational quotes on her coffee mugs. They wanted me invisible, forgettable. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was studying the silence, how it filled every space they didn't know I still occupied. Back home, I opened my laptop and logged into a secure folder. Inside, files I'd saved over the years, screenshots, voicemails, internal memos, a document titled evidence_morgan.docs. My inbox pinged. A new PR blast from Maxwell. New direction, new energy. Nadine Ray leads the way. Let them talk. I'll show them what madness looks like. I saw her through the window first, Morgan, seated across from Nadine at the cafe on Chestnut and 9th. They were laughing, loudly, leaning in like old college roommates swapping stories, not conspirators dismantling someone's career. I didn't go in. I stood across the street long enough to taste the betrayal. 5 years ago, Morgan would have been on the other side of that glass with me, not Nadine. She was a mess back then, drunk at a client dinner, whispering lies to cover her tracks. HR was ready to fire her. "One more screw-up," they said. She was crying in my office, eyeliner streaking like watercolor. "I'll lose everything," she told me. So I rewrote her report. I blamed the assistant, took the fallout quietly. She kept her job, her reputation, her damn seat at the table. And now she was sitting there like she never bled in front of me. I turned and walked away before they saw me. Back at my apartment, I collapsed into the chair by the window. The city outside kept moving, cab brakes squealing, kids on scooters, the normal churn of people unaware that someone else's name was being buried under theirs. An alert popped up on my phone. Legal correspondence. I opened it. It was a binding contract, an investment deal valued at $2.30 million, signed by me. Except I hadn't signed it. The signature was mine, but it wasn't mine. Too perfect, too clean, too recent. My chest tightened. I traced the transaction. It was authorized using my old credentials I had deleted, or thought I had. Nadine still had access to archived systems, and she used them. I sat there staring at the screen, heat pulsing behind my eyes. This wasn't just manipulation. It was criminal. She didn't just replace me. She was wearing me. The silence I had used to protect others had turned into a costume they wore to steal my life. I opened my secure folder. Phase 1, evidence collection, surveillance logs, email trails, password access metadata, HR decision timelines. I'd been keeping it all, because part of me knew this day would come. My printer hummed to life. Legal templates, statement drafts, witness lists. I wasn't going to confront them. I was going to dismantle them. I closed the file and looked out the window again. Morgan was gone. The glass reflected my own face back at me. I barely recognized it. Eyes sharp, jaw clenched. Not broken, just done. An hour later, my doorbell rang. A courier, envelope, no return address. Inside, a photo. My old office remodeled. Nadine behind my desk, mid-laugh, mid-performance, mid-theft. There was a sticky note on the frame. She fits better anyway. I didn't tear it. I didn't scream. I pinned it to my bulletin board, right next to the forged contract. They wanted to erase me. Instead, they woke me up. The phone call came just as the sun dropped behind the skyline. I didn't answer at first. I let it ring out, then checked the voicemail. Emily, it's Aunt Jan. Quick question. Why is Nadine driving a car with a license plate registered to your grandfather's estate? Thought you'd sold it years ago. I hadn't. I never did. I never even considered it. That property was the one piece of my grandfather I still had. It was where he taught me how to read balance sheets and build trust with silence. He called it the anchor. I called the family attorney that same night. They pulled the records, quietly, cautiously. The deed had been transferred 5 years ago. My name removed, replaced with Nadine's. I didn't sign anything. I never gave consent. But there it was, in black and white, my signature dated months after I stopped speaking to our mother. The next morning, I drove to Loretta's house. She opened the door in her usual way, tight-lipped like I was early to a dinner I wasn't invited to. I need to see the deed, I said. She blinked. What for? You know what for? She didn't deny it. She didn't even flinch. You weren't using it, Emily. Nadine needed somewhere stable. And you were always traveling. You thought you could sign for me? Loretta crossed her arms. I thought you'd understand. I walked past her into the house. She didn't stop me. In the back office, I found the copy, filed neatly under family trust. My grandfather's signature, slanted and thin, but wrong. The loops were too uniform. He hadn't written like that since before his stroke. This isn't his, I said quietly. This is forged. Don't be dramatic, she snapped. He would have wanted it that way. I turned to her. He's dead. He doesn't get a say. But I do. And I say you've crossed a line you don't come back from. She tried to speak again, but I was already at the door. That night she texted me, "You've always been cold when it came to family." I didn't respond. I printed the documents. I forwarded everything to Vanessa. Subject line, Discovery Phase 1. Begin immediately. I hadn't spoken a real warning to them before, but now I wanted them to hear it, not screamed, not sobbed, spoken clean and direct. So I accepted Loretta's invitation to dinner. She had booked a place uptown, too fancy to pretend we were still close. Nadine was already there when I arrived, sipping white wine and scrolling her phone. Loretta smiled when she saw me. "It's good to see you, honey." I said nothing. We ordered. I didn't touch my drink. Nadine leaned back in her chair, her eyes smug. "So what's this about? You wanted to clear the air?" I waited. Let them talk. Let them pile up their rationalizations like kindling. Then I leaned in. One more step toward what's mine, and I will take back everything, with interest. Loretta's fork slipped from her hand. Nadine let out a single sharp laugh, more bark than humor. "You think you're going to scare me with legalese?" she asked. I didn't blink. "I don't need to scare you, I just need the truth, and I already have it." I stood up, adjusted my coat, and walked out. In the car, I opened my phone, drafted the email. To Vanessa Cho, subject, Discovery, Nadine Ray. Message, move forward, get everything tied to her, property, transactions, anything with my name. Then I hit send. If they wanted to play legacy games, I'd show them what legacy meant. It started with a declined transaction. Just a simple bank transfer to cover my utilities. Denied. I refreshed the app. Still frozen. Then came the red banner. Federal review. Restricted activity. My stomach sank before I even reached for the phone. The customer service rep's tone was flat, rehearsed. "Ma'am, your accounts are under investigation due to flagged activity linked to an offshore fund. I can't say more." Offshore fund? I didn't have one, but I knew someone who did. I called Vanessa. She didn't even sound surprised when I explained. "You're listed as a co-beneficiary," she said, "in Nadine's name, through a holding firm in the Caymans. They've been funneling money under your identity." I stared at the ceiling. My name, again, always my name. "And it gets worse," Vanessa added. "They used your old passport scan to authorize it." My voice dropped. My passport was deactivated. I shredded it. "Someone in your old office had access? Before they shut you out?" Of course. The office I built, the system I managed, the passwords I used to share with Nadine, years ago when I still believed she wanted to be like me, not replace me. My hands curled into fists, nails digging crescent moons into my palms. I thought of that sticky note on the photo. She fits better anyway. They had stolen more than my job. They were burning my reputation, rerouting my life, rewriting my signature into crimes I didn't commit. And I had let it happen, out of trust, out of silence, out of being tired, but no more. Vanessa and I met the next morning. Her office smelled like strong coffee and intent. We reviewed the documents, every wire transfer, every forged authorization. We started building the case, slow, methodical, brutal. She slid me the first affidavit to sign. I didn't hesitate. My pen didn't waver. "I'm not just taking them down," I told her. "I'm cleaning the wreckage, permanently." I walked out of her office into a rain-heavy sky. The clouds hung low, like weight waiting to fall. I didn't use an umbrella. Back home, I went to the safe. I opened the folder I'd labeled Phoenix Holdings, Termination Clause 17.3. Maxwell Financial's entire headquarters operated out of my building. The contract gave me power they didn't know I still held, because they never thought I'd use it. They thought freezing my accounts would freeze me, but I'm the one holding the thermostat. I sat at my desk, sent the full legal package to the Department of Justice. Then I opened a blank document and titled it, Execution Sequence. It started now. If they wanted a war, they should have picked someone who hadn't already survived one. The folder Vanessa laid on the table was thick, labeled, tabbed, and deadly. She didn't say much, just slid it toward me and waited. Inside were copies of financial reports, projected valuations, all identical to the quarterly presentations I had prepared before being fired. But they'd been rebranded, with Nadine's name, and they were exaggerated, tampered, dressed up to impress investors with a growth curve that didn't exist. "Gavin used your work," Vanessa said, voice low but sharp, then inflated it to justify a funding round he knew wouldn't hold. "We have email trails, his sign-off. We also have your original versions. The SEC will eat this alive." I closed the folder, looked up at her. Set the meeting. 3 hours later, Gavin Crane sat across from me. The same sterile boardroom where he once gutted me in 5 sentences. He looked older than I remembered. Or maybe now I just saw him clearly. "We don't need to drag this through the mud," he said, folding his hands. "This company's image matters. Let's talk settlement." I leaned forward. "You committed fraud using my name and work. You buried me so Nadine could ride the press wave. And now that the numbers don't add up, you're panicking." He didn't deny it. Vanessa laid a single envelope on the table. "This is your notice. You have 24 hours to respond. After that, discovery begins, and we go public." For the first time, Gavin didn't speak. That night, I sent the second strike, an anonymous tip, a folder of traced wire transfers from Nadine's fund to an offshore account in Malta, tied to a trust labeled ER Legacy Fund. My initials, my name, my fake signature used to open it. A journalist I trusted ran with the leak. By noon, #Maxwell scandal was trending on LinkedIn. The headlines weren't loud, but they were lethal. Former CFO's identity used in potential laundering scheme. "New executive accused of shadow finance fraud?" Gavin tried to call. Nadine sent a text. "Why are you doing this? We're family." I didn't respond. Instead, I sent a legal packet to Loretta. It included a notarized affidavit proving the forged deed, a copy of the real will from my grandfather, and one small note. "Let's see how it feels to lose something you thought was always yours." That night, I watched the news with a glass of wine, the anchor's voice calm and devastating. Maxwell Group rocked by internal scandal. CFO resigns amid legal investigation. Incoming audit to determine potential criminal negligence. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I closed the laptop, stared out at the fog curling under the streetlights. They had mistaken my silence for surrender. But now only consequences remained. The envelope was cream-colored, thick, and sealed with a faint trace of old perfume. Edith's handwriting on the front was unmistakable. "Come alone. It's time." No pleasantries, no emotion, just a summons. By the time I arrived at her small home outside Philadelphia, the sun was beginning its slow descent behind the maple trees lining her porch. She opened the door before I knocked. "You're right on time," she said. Her living room hadn't changed since I was a child. Same floral armchairs, same ticking wall clock, same bowl of ribbon candies no one ever ate. She motioned for me to sit. I did. Then she handed me a folder. No explanation. Inside, the original will, my grandfather's true testament. I read it once, Then again. My hands shook by the third pass. It was all there. Phoenix Holdings, the commercial properties, the passive trusts. The language was clear. I was the sole heir. No conditions, no confusion. He had left everything to me. I looked up. They knew? Edith's mouth was a thin line. Your mother did. She saw it the week he passed, said you were too busy, that you'd understand. I didn't answer, because I did understand. Not just what she had done, but what I had let slide for too long. But the folder wasn't finished. A single sheet at the bottom. One clause I hadn't seen in any of the photocopies. Should Emily Ray fail to assert ownership within 5 years of this document's issuance, the estate shall transfer to an alternate trustee at the discretion of the executor. My eyes shot up. When was this issued? Edith didn't flinch. 4 years, 11 months, and 23 days ago. I sat back, the breath knocked out of me. 7 days. I had 7 days before everything defaulted into someone else's hands. Likely Nadine's, or worse, Loretta's lawyer. The inheritance, the properties, the company I unknowingly built atop a lie. I had spent so long cleaning up after everyone, staying silent because it felt easier, safer. But silence didn't protect anything. It only gave them space to overwrite me. Back at home, I pulled my legal folders from the shelf. Vanessa's latest drafts were waiting, clean and crisp. I renamed the lead document, Testament v. Maxwell. Then I picked up the phone. Vanessa, I said, we're executing everything. No delays, no forgiveness. This isn't about revenge anymore. This is about restoration. As the evening light faded into soft gold, a car pulled up outside my building. Nadine stepped out. I watched her pace through the peephole. She was holding something, a white envelope. Her expression was tight, uncertain. She knocked. I didn't move. A few seconds later, she knocked again, louder. Still, I said nothing. I turned my gaze back to the folder on the table, the ink still wet from my signature. She knocked too late. I already opened something bigger. At 7:48 a.m., I stood by the window, coffee cooling in my hand, as the courier stepped out of the black SUV across the street. The envelope he carried was thick and official, embossed with the Phoenix Holdings seal. He handed it to the building manager, who blinked at the return address. Security moved into place a few minutes later, badges already in hand. No sirens, no raised voices, just precision. Calm, corporate precision. I didn't need to be there. At 9 a.m. sharp, Maxwell Industries lost access to the building. Their keycards didn't work. Their names disappeared from the digital directory. Emails bounced, and the glass doors that once opened to them now reflected their faces back at them. Stunned, pale, scrambling. Vanessa was on site, calm, collected, flanked by 2 legal assistants and a stack of documents. Gavin showed up first, red-faced, disbelief leaking from every word. "You can't do this," he said, pushing past a guard. "This is abuse of power." Vanessa raised one brow. "Clause 17.3, she said. Unethical corporate conduct, lease terminated, 12 hours to vacate. Then came Nadine. Her heels clicked against the marble like an echo that didn't belong. She was dressed for war, but found herself locked out. She pounded on the glass. "Emily!" she screamed, even though she knew I wouldn't come. Inside, movers boxed up offices. Desks were disassembled. Portraits came down. It was surgical. Morgan tried spinning a PR statement, but the press had already picked up the story. Maxwell Industries faces internal collapse amid legal eviction. The headlines didn't need my help. They wrote themselves. I watched none of it. Instead, I drove an hour north to my grandfather's estate. The old house had been restored. Clean paint, sturdy windows, a fresh sign on the mailbox. Ray House. It smelled like pine and lemon oil and something deeper. Memory, maybe. I sat in the chair he used to favor, pulled the will from my bag, read it again. Not to reassure myself, but to remember why I started this, why I fought. Then I opened a new folder on my laptop, Phoenix Next, a mentorship initiative for women who had been told to wait, to sit still, to sacrifice. I wouldn't let them. My phone buzzed, a voicemail from Loretta. "We never thought it would go this far, Emily. It was never meant to hurt this much." I deleted it, not in spite, but in peace. I didn't want revenge. I wanted air, freedom, and I had it. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured one last glass of wine. The sky outside was quiet, dusted and orange. I didn't win, I just stopped losing. Sometimes survival doesn't look like triumph. It looks like reclaiming your name, saying no where you once stayed silent, closing the door, gently but for good. I've learned that silence is only noble when it's a choice, not a cage. When people show you their loyalty is conditional, believe them. And when they take what's yours, take back your voice. If you're watching this and you've ever felt erased, overlooked, or quietly replaced, let this story be your permission to step forward. You don't have to burn bridges, but you can build new ones with stronger foundations and your name carved in steel. What would you do if someone tried to rewrite your story? Let's talk about it in the comments. Was this story relatable? Did it remind you of someone? Or maybe of yourself? Drop a 1 if it touched you. Let me know where you're watching from. Didn't love it? That's okay too. Tell me why. I read every comment. Want more stories that cut deep and rise strong? Hit subscribe and join our community. Let's keep healing. Together. Thanks for being here. See you in the next story.